Today is the saddest day on the Jewish calendar, Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av, that commemorates the destruction of both of our temples and the exile of the Jewish people, which led to thousands of years of Jewish suffering. And just as we began observing Tisha B'Av, another video of a hostage was released. A hostage who was kept in captivity for 667 days. Who is still in anguish, suffering, starving, an image of him digging a grave, which he says may very well be his very own grave, God forbid. And we ask ourselves, how has the world allowed this to occur? How has the world allowed these hostages to languish for 667 days? And we could only think about the word of the Book of Lamentations, which we read last night and is read again this morning, which begins with the word Echa, how has this come to pass? It's a wailing cry of the prophet Jeremiah. How did we fall into such a state of affairs? And our rabbis connect the word Echa to the word Ayeka. You see, in the beginning of creation, when God made Adam and Eve and told them not to eat from the tree of knowledge, and they ate from the tree of knowledge, and then God comes to the garden and says, Ayeka, where are you? And rabbis say it's the same four letters, the same word, just with different vowels. One is Echa, how did this come to be? And the other one is Ayeka, where are you? And our rabbis say, just like Jeremiah wails and laments over the Jewish nation, God laments and wails over Adam and Eve with the word Ayeka. But being that there are two different words with the vowels, one means how did this come to pass, and the other one means where are you? What is the deeper correlation between the two words? And the answer perhaps is that what were Adam and Eve doing? They ate from the tree of knowledge, and then with all of their intelligence and sophistication and wisdom that they thought they gained, they actually thought that they could hide from God, that they could conceal themselves from God, that they could create a barrier, a separation between where God's domain is and their personal domain is. And God comes crying out to Adam and Eve and says, Ayeka, where are you? How have you, with your increased knowledge, lost your wisdom and think that you could actually hide from God, that you could create a partition between your personal affairs and God? How is it that you think you could sequester God in the garden? I am everywhere. And therefore, if your life is devoid of my presence, of a relationship with God, then where are you in life? What will become of you? Echa, you want to know how you fall into this state of affairs? How has this come to pass? Because you thought, Ayeka, that you could hide from God. And this is something that we see to be so true today. All the Ivy League colleges, which represent intellectualism, knowledge, like the tree of knowledge, have forgotten their basic humanity. And that's why Ivy League college after Ivy League college has tolerated anti-Semitism on their campuses. Students who are supposed to be the most intellectual, the most knowledgeable, that's how they got to these Ivy League colleges. And they're protesting in support of terrorists rather than in support of innocent hostages and victims of October 7th. This is why we see in England this past year that the fastest growing name in England, believe it or not, shockingly, is for the terrorist who masterminded October 7th, Yahya Sinwar. The name Yahya has been the most growing name, fastest pace growing name in England this past year. That's why we see that when this innocent woman, 43-year-old woman, Wesley Lee Patner, was murdered at her Blackstone office at 345 Park Avenue this week in cold blood, many on the internet were celebrating her death, just like they celebrated the death of Brian Thompson, the healthcare executive, saying, well, they deserved it. Their family should mourn. Why? Because they are capitalists. They've lost their basic humanity of understanding good and evil. They've forgotten God, and they think that they can set their own morals and ethics. And that's when the world falls into grave disrepair. The world falls into a state of mourning and exile and lamenting. And God says, Echa, how did this come to be? And the answer is because you thought you could hide from God. You've forgotten the basic commandments like thou shalt not commit murder. Unequivocally, no ifs or buts. There's a story told about a man who would never come to synagogue. And so one day the rabbi saw him, and the rabbi said, I don't see you in the synagogue. What's going on? And so he was very sarcastic. So he said to the rabbi, Rabbi, we live in a modern day and age today. We live in an age that with the help of a plane, we could fly like a bird. And with the help of a submarine, we could swim like a fish. And with the help of a car, we could run like a deer. So in a day and age that we could fly like a bird, swim like a fish, run like a deer, why do we need an ancient Torah that was given thousands of years ago by God? And the rabbi looked at him and said, you say you could run like a deer, you could swim like a fish, you could fly like a bird, but tell me, do you also know how to walk like a man? That's the message of our generation. We have to get back to basic humanity of right and wrong, of good and evil. And we pray that this Tisha B'Av, we all answer the question of Ayeko, where are we as a human race, as a human nation? Like God spoke to Adam, who is the father of all of humanity. We need to come back and recognize that God is in our lives each and every day, in every area, facet, and domain. And we cannot relegate God to the religious square of prayer, of sanctuary, but the sanctuary that we mourn today has to permeate every aspect of our lives. And when we walk in the ways of God, when we walk like men and women, proper, upright, and just, then we will no longer have to lament and say, Echa, how has the world fallen into such a state of tragic pain and suffering? Have a meaningful fast. And let us connect with our brethren around the world on this day of mourning. And together in prayer to God, may we see the release and the freedom of all of our suffering hostages. And may Israel dwell securely. And may we only know from joy. And may humanity come to its senses. Have a meaningful fast.